Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. And today is Monday and we're starting a new week. Last night we had our Mabon / Ostar ritual here on Corellian TV. I hope you were able to join us for that. It was quite a lovely ritual. Yesterday, I also had my Mabon ritual here in Vermilion County that I attended, which was quite nice. Um, and so it's been a good holiday weekend. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you're watching on. If you're watching live, they'll show up here in my chat room. And today, I was going to talk about Odin's eye. And what you say is Odin's eye. And Odin's eye is a name that's being given to the asteroid 2024. I don't have it in front of me, but it is the upcoming temporary moon that is much in the news at present. And this is a very fascinating subject. Um, it's asteroid 2024 PT5. But for a short time, it's going to become a second moon to the Earth. And what is happening is that this asteroid is going to be caught in the Earth's gravitation for several months, 2 months basically, during which time it will make a horseshoe-shaped orbit around the Earth before returning to its normal heliacal orbit or orbit around the Sun. And I'm sure this is not the first time in human history that we've had a temporary second moon, but I've certainly never heard of a previous time. And so that makes this rather a unique moment in history. And it's also a unique moment in astrology. And so far, I've not heard anyone discuss the astrological aspects of this second moon, which again is being called Odin's eye. And today, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And hello to Ed Carr in the chat room. It's good to see you. There will be two different aspects to how we can interpret Odin's eye. The first is through astrogency. If you're not familiar with astrogency, astrogency is divination through celestial events. It is not the same as astrology, but it's closely related and is the predecessor of astrology. And of course, the second is astrologically, by where it places itself in different people's charts. And today, I'm probably going to talk more about the first, the astrogency version of what this means, and talk more about the astrological one as we move forward. First, what is the significance of Odin's eye? And hello to Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you. Odin was the chief god of the Germanic pantheons. Hello to Janet Winston in the chat room. It's good to see you. And he was known for a large number of things, one of which was having only one eye. And he had lost the other eye, which is usually thought to be the left eye, by making a sacrifice of it in order to drink from the well of Urd, or the well of Mimir, which conferred more or less universal knowledge on anyone who could do it. But when Odin sought to drink from this well, the guardian of the well, Mimir, demanded the sacrifice of one of his eyes to allow him to do so. And hello to Mystique in the chat room. It's good to see you. And so Odin removed his eye, offered it to the well, and was able to drink and gain that knowledge. So when we look at our temporary second moon, Odin's eye, what does that mean symbolically? Well, you know, the normal moon, our well-accomplished Hello to Maria Law in the chat room. It's good to see you. Um, our well-established existing moon in astrology represents emotions, the subconscious, magic, and psychism, the inner parts of the being, and in general represents that across the board. Obviously, in religion, it is also the mother goddess aspect for many people. Um, Not everyone, but many. And so also has a nurturing aspect. But generally, it represents the inner nature. So, what does Odin's eye represent? And hello to Mary Cavalcante in the chat room. It's good to see you, Mary. If the ordinary moon represents our subconscious, and looking at the legend of how Odin sacrificed his eye to gain universal wisdom, then I would say that Odin's eye represents um, spiritual wisdom, prophecy, oracular work, divine guidance, and deep connection to the inner self. Also, the revelation of things that would otherwise be secret, and um, understanding and coming to greater wisdom. That is how I would interpret this particular second moon. Now, the second moon has some interesting symbolism in a Corellian sense for those of us who are Corellian. It will begin its orbit as a second moon on the 29th day of this month, which is also our regional lustration here in Vermilion County in the homeland of the Corellian tradition, more or less at the same time that oracles will be given here. And if we are looking at it as representing oracular work, visionary wisdom, that is a very interesting omen. And I'm very curious to see what those oracles reveal. And hello to Steve Taylor in the chat room. It will complete its 2-month period as a second moon on November 25th, which would be my late mother's 97th birthday, were she living. My late mother being the third head of the Corellian tradition. And these two things are of great interest to me looking at it. I will also say, without going into too great a detail, because one is not supposed to go into great detail with this subject, but this issue of two moons is very closely related to my personal vision symbol, my personal vision name. I won't say how because that would not be appropriate, but it's very interesting to me because I would never have imagined that there was going to be a moment in my lifetime when the Earth would have two moons. And yet here it is. What all does that mean? Well, we're going to spend a little time thinking about that. We may have a little discussion about that. But it must mean something. And as I say, in terms of astrongency, um, and what would be the what would be the adjective form of astrongency? I don't think I've ever heard it used as an adjective, but um, when we look at its meaning in this way, it's again cosmic wisdom, oracular work, prophecy, revelation of secrets, um, spiritual knowledge. And for this 2 months, which happen incidentally to coincide with the upcoming United States election, which already has enough writing around it, um, it's very interesting to see. I'm very curious to see how this affects people's behavior. I'm very curious to see how it affects oracular work during this period. And I'm curious to see what things come to light during this period, because that would be what I would expect to happen. Now, I mentioned previously that the United States is in the middle of its Pluto return, or I should say it's experiencing its Pluto return, which usually brings about great change in any institution that survives long enough to have one. To have this happen uh, as well is really quite remarkable. And I have to say that, like a lot of the outer planets, I think this has more of a planetary significance than necessarily an individual significance, but I do think it has an individual significance for people also. And what I would say is where it appears in your chart at the time of its entrance and exit will tell you how it will affect you. And I do not yet have that information. I'm going to see if I can't find it. And I think that for those children born in this 2-month period, it is a very unique situation because they will have a planetary influence no one born before or after will have. And that is most remarkable. And I would expect that that would bring them a greater psychic connection and revelation of secrets in important ways in their lives, revelation of prophecies in important ways in their lives. What ways would be determined by where in their chart the Odin's eye appears. The idea of Odin's eye, in part, is that it can see everything. By drinking the water of the well of Erd, Odin gained the power to be able to have universal knowledge, but the eye that he sacrificed had the power to see things at great distance that ordinary eyes could not see. That's why Mimir wanted it as the sacrifice. Of course, Odin's remaining eye can still see all things, but the wandering eye can presumably see still more because it is not located in only one place. So this is a time of seeing things that we would not otherwise see. And, I think we can reasonably ask, and hello to Lynn Townsend in the chat room. It's good to see you. And hello to Steve Taylor, if I didn't already say hello. I think that we can reasonably ask whether this is a blessing or a curse, and it could in its way be both. I suppose it depends how much we want to see the hidden things that we are going to see, because that, of course, includes things about ourselves. So this should be a time which should also promote either deep personal understanding or psychological crisis if you're not willing to look at the things that are brought forward. So my advice to all people is that what comes to you during this 2-month period, whether pleasant to see or otherwise, pay attention. Watch what it does. Do not shy away from it or hide from it because it's important. And it will tell you things about yourself, even as it tells us things about our world. And in both cases, they are going to be important things that we need to see, but not necessarily pleasant ones. Not necessarily unpleasant either, but not necessarily pleasant. It's a time of deep shadow work, for want of a better way to put it. But unlike most shadow work, which is individual, this is going to be kind of universal. And I think we're going to see it everywhere. And in the chat room, Mary says, very interesting. It is very interesting. And I think one of the things that we need to be looking at is how we, who are practitioners of witchcraft, can best take advantage of this unique situation. And Julia says, would having 2 moons affect the tides of the sea? And the answer is, well, it certainly could. Will it? I don't know. I'm not sure of the relative size of this asteroid and exactly how that would interact, but I can see whether anyone has attempted to decipher that yet. But given that the existing moon does affect the tides, the presence of a second one should have at least some effect, yes. And the present moon also affects us, and there will be certainly a full moon during this period, which period of time is known for producing exaggerated effects among humanity. And so I think that having a second moon at this time will also increase that. Like we need any more craziness in the world at this point. Um, and Maria says, when will the two moons happen in the UK? I believe that these dates are universal. And hello to Divination TV. I'm not sure. I'm going to assume that that's Reverend Mary, although I thought I had seen Reverend Mary earlier, but hello, Reverend Mary. And I think that the dates of September 29th to November 25th are universal. Those are just the dates when the second moon, when the Odin's Eye will be making its run around Earth. And wherever you are in the world, it will be the same period of time, because it's not a matter of how things appear from any part of this planet, but rather the physical, mechanical position of this asteroid. It's like the equinoxes or the solstices. They're the same date everywhere on Earth, whereas many other things may vary depending where on Earth you are in terms of astrology. And Divination TV says, yes, it's Reverend Mary. And Janet says, I will keep an eye on what goes on in my day. Absolutely. And I'm particularly curious, really, for this whole period. And I think we're going to be discussing this a couple of times during this week. And we shall see what all we get. And now I see that we're a little past halfway through our hour, and we're going to take a moment for a message from our sponsor, Equinox Learning Hub. And thank you, Equinox Learning Hub. And I am back, and we're talking about Odin's Eye. And as I said earlier, I can't imagine this is the only time in the history of Earth that something like this has happened. But I am aware of no other historical time during the history of humanity that it has happened, or at least that it's been recorded as having happened. I suppose it's possible it could have happened at times when it was not visible from the Earth, and therefore not really seen, not really understood. But it seems to me this is an absolutely unique time in history. And, I've talked before about how I do not like the fact that social media tries to make every astrological event into this once in a millennia occurrence that it really is not. I'm not fond of the advent of the so-called supermoon, which I think is merely a distraction from how we truly interact with the moon metaphysically. Or the fact that every little alignment of planets is now, I'm not going to say of cosmic significance. Of course, it's always of cosmic significance. That's the whole point. But they're often built into things that they're not. But this is a genuinely historical moment, a genuine once-in-a-lifetime thing. Not only have I never seen anything like this in my lifetime, I've never heard of an idea like this in my lifetime. And in all likelihood, neither has anyone else watching. that makes it important. That means that your grandchildren may one day ask you what you were doing during the time of the second moon, because I can't imagine people will forget that this happened, although I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they don't remember as well as they should. But it's an important moment, and for we who practice metaphysics, we need to pay some attention both to what we expect this to mean and how it actually plays out. And as I say, my interpretation of Odin's eye is that just as in mythology, Odin's eye could see things everywhere in existence, that this will bring to light, bring to vision, things that are not normally seen, both in the revelation of secrets and in um, prophecy, oracular work, divination of all sorts. It's going to be a time when our ability to see, I would think, would be improved for most people. I say most people because none of these things affects everyone the same way, um, and how it will affect you as an individual depends where in your chart it's hitting. But how it affects the Earth is pretty straightforward. So I would expect to see all kinds of hidden motivations, hidden actions, um, prophecy, predictions of all kinds during this period. That is what I would expect to see. And also a great deal of shadow work, both individually and universally. And of course, shadow work can be intentional or it can be something you just do. And usually when people talk about karma, because shadow work is all about karma, they talk about reliving the experience in a new way. So this may bring about a lot of repetition of things to try to bring out the inner meaning of it for people. Um, and a lot of people may have their shadow work that way. Um, but the other aspect of karma, so karma is all about attachment. And so you can do your shadow work intentionally without having to relive it if you know how and you choose to do so. But you have to be honest with yourself. And I think this is going to be a period where it's very important for us all to be honest with ourselves. And um, I think that's probably going to be something we will see from the very first day, which will be this coming Sunday. And again, this coming Sunday is our regional illustration here in Vermilion County. And what do we do at illustration? We do oracular work. And there will be a lot of oracular work happening, I think, both in the illustration and adjacent to it, to unexpectedly coincide with this event. And if you have followed lustration oracles over the years, they're usually pretty accurate, but they're not always terribly obvious at the time. Some of them became obvious months or years later in terms of what they meant, which is not unusual for oracle work. One of the things about the famous Oracle of Delphi was that it was not uncommon for the oracles to be very, very clear in hindsight, but not so clear when they came through. And that's the centerpiece of numerous mythologies um, among the ancient Greeks. When a particular oracle was made, which seemed straightforward and came about in the most unexpected ways, such as the oracle for Oedipus, that he would kill his father and marry his mother. And to get away from this, his natural parents exposed him to die in the wilderness. But he ended up being raised by another couple um, who later also got this same um, message. And So he made it a point, because he didn't ever want to do such a horrible thing, to not go home after receiving this oracle, and went out and accidentally discovered his biological parents, one of whom he killed and one of whom he married. Um, Oracles are interesting this way. Now, am I saying that's a historical oracle? Probably not. Um, but it is a good example of what an oracle can sometimes do. And, looking back, I've had oracles um, whose true meaning was not obvious when they first came through, and only became clear over time. So when I talk about things coming out through oracles, through prophecy, um, they're not always going to be extremely clear, but I do think they're going to be very prevalent during this period. And I strongly suspect that we'll be returning to this subject. We may return to it tomorrow. Um, but once the actual orbit of the second moon has begun, um, I plan to be actually taking stock of what it's doing while it's doing it. And so let us prepare ourselves to receive Odin's eye. And as we receive Odin's eye, and if you think about it, that's what's happening. We're receiving the oracular eye of Odin, which can see everything, everywhere, and will bring to light many, many things. So let us open our heart to increased vision. Let us open our heart to increased understanding. And let us resolve to ourselves that we will not hide from the knowledge that tries to come through. And it's very interesting. And, I will say again, is this a blessing or a curse? And it's going to be different things to different people. Sometimes the exact same thing will be both a blessing and a curse, depending on how it hits individuals. And so I'm sure there will be people for whom this will be a very painful time, and others for whom it will simply be a time of enlightenment. And for most of us, it's probably going to be both. And as we go through this time, I will have, I expect, a number of meditations to help us to attune to it, to help us to embrace it and to make the most of it. And again, I find it extraordinarily interesting that Odin's Eye is coming on the occasion of a regional illustration in the mother country of the tradition, um, almost exactly at the time that we would be bringing through oracles. Not exactly, but almost, within a few hours at least, and continuing until my mother's birthday. And that is a significance that I don't know that I completely grasp at this moment, but we'll probably be talking more about that too. There are so many things involved in this, and it certainly is going to be a time of prophecy, of oracle work, which are basically just different words for the same thing, and of revelations. And I strongly suspect that we will also see some of those Christian dominionist types that we often talk about um, having yet another rapture because of this, and probably going a little crazy over it. Because, you want to talk about something that's hard to deny as an omen. A second moon in the sky is something that's very hard to deny as an omen. And I'm sure all of the different religions of the world will interpret it in their own ways. So I hope you found this to be an interesting discussion. I certainly find it to be an interesting situation. And, I said earlier, never in my life did I imagine that I would see two moons in one sky, physically, around this earth. And yet here it is. And what does it mean? Well, again, to me, um, I strongly believe that it means the revelation of things that are hidden, things that are as yet unknown, things that we all need to see. So let's see what comes from it. And with that, we've come to the end of our half hour. So let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all those wonderful things in our life, including the extremely unexpected. And I am hard-pressed to think of anything more unexpected than having a second moon. And so we thank you for bringing this into our experience. We thank you for Odin's eye and all the things it will be able to see. And we ask you to help us to welcome this revelation, to make the most of it in the most positive ways. We rejoice in your help with this undertaking. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you're always with us, still from respect, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always.